Well, even a lot of mainstream outlets are covering this, that the Doctor Who ratings continue to plummet. I'm pulling this from Game Rant, who I believe is pulling this from Deadline. Doctor Who ratings continue to plummet amid cancellation rumors. This was published literally yesterday, so that would be May 25th. This video is going out on the 26th. Doctor Who is a beloved television show that has existed in some form since 1963. While there have been some breaks, it has remained a popular part of pop culture. Mostly, that sense right there, that's mostly in the UK. Doctor Who didn't really get popular over here in the States until David Tennant took over the role in like 2006. However, throughout the past year, there have been plenty of rumors about the show being axed, and with no third season being confirmed at this point, neither the BBC nor Disney has done much to dispel them. Still, Doctor Who has pushed on with its second season, with Ncuti Gatwa taking on the titular role. The stakes have been extremely high for each episode, with just one remaining for the season. Fans are going to want some answers, but without them, all people have to lean on are the viewing figures. One of the biggest talking points surrounding the future of Doctor Who has surrounded ratings, with this season needing to perform well for another season for the show to be greenlit. Unfortunately, Deadline's latest report about this season's viewing figures has made for worrying news regarding the future of the science fiction series. The first 4 episodes averaged 3.1 million viewers, which was 800,000 down from the previous season. However, when compared to Jodie Whittaker's final season as the Doctor, the gap has increased to 2 million. It's a significant drop in interest, and while there could be a multitude of reasons for that, the figures themselves are all the bosses will care about. That's a good point. If Doctor Who continues to exist, the viewing figures will have to increase, or it will become impossible for the higher-ups to justify the expense. The new version of Doctor Who has been criticized for pushing woke storylines and taking on political conversations within its episodes, which is something that has turned fans off the show. However, it's unlikely that they are the only reasons why people aren't viewing the series. Whether it's changing viewing habits or Doctor Who simply not having the pull it once did, there are multiple reasons that it will likely be impacting things. Official statements have simply pushed fans toward the fact that an official decision hasn't been made yet, while BBC has claimed that Gatwa has not been fired. That might be a positive situation for him personally, but if the show isn't being renewed, then it will make little difference moving forward. Doctor Who has pushed the barriers this season regarding the overall storyline, with one of the grandest efforts in the show's history, with secrets from the start of the first season being unveiled. However, the impressive storytelling alone hasn't made an impact on viewership, proving that there is a bigger problem to deal with. Unfortunately for Doctor Who fans, all the signs are currently pointing toward the show either being cancelled or put on ice for a period while a new strategy is thought up. Whether the final episode of the season will wrap things up in a conclusive way that people can just move on from the show will remain to be seen. However, the dropping viewership is problematic for Doctor Who, and it's difficult to see a way around that currently. Now, there's a point that I want to go back to here, because this article brings up a very good point. In the fact that, the new version of Doctor Who has been criticized for pushing woke storylines and taking on political conversation within its episodes, which is something that has turned fans off the show. And I acknowledge that all of that stuff is there. The woke storylines is all there, especially in the 60th anniversary specials, which I remember even calling out at the time, especially with the Star Beast and Wild Blue Yonder. Okay, the woke storylines, you could really see them starting at the end of the Peter Capaldi era and really going into when Jodie Whittaker took over the role. But they have a good point here, is that, it's unlikely that they are the only reasons why people aren't viewing the series. And what I have done is I have written down a few points that I believe is the reason why Doctor Who is currently in a decline that has nothing to do with the that has nothing to do with the quote-unquote woke storylines, which, again, I will acknowledge are present, especially in the 60th anniversary specials, but I don't think it's the only reason why people are tuning out of Doctor Who. The first point I want to bring up is that New Who, which is Doctor Who from 2005 up to present time, up to the Ncuti Gatwa era, is actually split between HBO Max and Disney Plus in terms of streaming. The 60th anniversary specials are on Disney Plus, but season 4 with the Doctor and Donna are on HBO Max. So if you're a brand new viewer going into Doctor Who and you're watching these 60th anniversary specials starring David Tennant and Catherine Tate, what is so special about David Tennant and Catherine Tate coming back to Doctor Who? If you're a brand new viewer, right? You boot up Disney Plus because you hear about these Doctor Who specials, but that's all that's available on there. Oh, no, you need HBO Max in order to stream all of the episodes that came prior to the 60th anniversary special. And so if you're a new viewer looking at that, you're going to go, what the fuck is the point? I'm not going to pay for two separate services just to watch one show. So at this point I'm just going to move on. And that is not the fault of the person that is deciding to just not watch the Doctor Who episodes on Disney Plus because they don't want to have to pay for two different streaming services to watch the same show. I don't care how hard that they try to sell that the Ncuti Gatwa episodes are a quote-unquote reboot of the show. The 60th anniversary specials are a direct callback to the 4th season with David Tennant and Catherine Tate. And again, what is so special about the Doctor and Donna Noble if you haven't seen, the David Tennant episodes? What's so special about David Tennant? Okay, I'm repeating myself, so I'm going to move on. The second point I want to bring up is the increased production budgets. I've brought it up before, but I want to keep hammering this point home, is that TV shows, especially fantasy and science fiction, over the last decade, really going into the 2010s, have been putting like more and more like movie, like cinematic level special effects in these episodes. And I think overall it's actually hurting the show, because the shows now feel like they're focused more on the effects over everything else, which actually has a very detrimental effect going down the line. And I'm going to immediately go into my next point here, is that as a result of these increased production, but these increased production budgets, these increased effects budgets, there are fewer episodes every season. There's only 8 episodes per season for the Ncuti Gatwa era. I'm not counting the Christmas specials. But still, the problem with having so few episodes, these little rinky-dink 8-episode seasons, is that if you have 3 or 4 episodes that are very middle of the road or overall just bad, well, 4 episodes in an 8-episode season, that's going to sting a lot. If 4 to 5 episodes per season are very middle of the road or bad, versus if Doctor Who actually had a traditional season, if they actually went for like 13 to 16 episodes a season, if there were only 4, maybe 5 episodes that were very middle of the road, with only one of those 4 or 5 being genuinely bad, the sting would not be as impactful, because there's a lot more episodes to consider within the season. And again, I think that's why these little rinky-dink, 8 to 10 episode seasons are actually hurting TV shows more than they're helping, because it's really putting a lot of pressure on the writers to just write banger after banger after banger. Well, anyone who's ever watched any amount of TV in their life knows that there is occasionally going to be a bad episode every now and then. Avatar: The Last Airbender had a couple of bad episodes. Okay, believe you me, nobody talks about The Great Divide. Even Modern Family, while most fans praised the first 7 seasons, there were still a couple of bad episodes here and there. But again, when you're talking about a couple of bad episodes in a season that contains 22 to 24 episodes, having 2 or 3 bad episodes in a 22 to 24 episode season doesn't really sting that much, because you can just ignore them, but the rest of the episodes are so great that you're going to say, well, overall the seasons are still really good. But again, if at least half of the season is very middle of the road, and you have even one bad episode on top of that, you're talking over 60% of the season is either very middle of the road or bad, because remember, that is 5 episodes out of an 8-episode season. If they had a more traditional television production, and they kept the amount of middle of the road to bad episodes, I don't think people would really complain. And the final point that I actually want to bring up, and it's something that the article did touch on, is that in my opinion, franchise fatigue for Doctor Who is real. Okay, Doctor Who as a whole has been running for over 60 years. And New Who, that started with Christopher Eccleston, that led to David Tennant, has been running for the last 20 years, ever since 2005. This reminds me of an episode of The Simpsons where they realize that Itchy and Scratchy is not really growing in the ratings anymore. And Lisa even made the comment and said that, Itchy and Scratchy is the best that it's ever been, but just after so many years on the air, it just doesn't have the same pull that it once had. Again, if we're talking Doctor Who from like 2006 up to 2013, the David Tennant, Matt Smith era, that is when New Who was its most popular, especially here in North America, was the David Tennant and Matt Smith era. It actually started falling off with Peter Capaldi. Now, again, you can decry that, that's when the show started going woke, but that didn't start happening until toward the tail end of the Peter Capaldi era. No, what happened is that that New Who has been running now for over 20 years. At some point, people are just going to dip out because the show's no longer as exciting. The show's now boring. They might be repeating episodes. They might be repeating episodes way too much. Who knows? So to say that Doctor Who is only declining in ratings because it quote unquote went woke is completely ignoring all the other factors that is actually driving the declining ratings. Because yes, franchise fatigue is absolutely real. Okay, you have a show that's now been running for over 20 years. It's going to be really difficult to maintain interest after that much time. And so I want to end the video off with this. And in my opinion, will Doctor Who really go away? Doctor Who will not really go away. In my opinion, it's far too iconic. I think what's going to happen after Season 2, if Season 3 does not get announced. Now, there is a spin-off series coming to Disney+. I don't remember what it's called. Someone in the comments will help correct, will probably say what it is. If no official third series is greenlit with Ncuti Gatwa, in my opinion, it's just going to go. The show's just going to go on hiatus, right? It went on hiatus in the late 80s. I think the last season of the classic Doctor Who aired in 1989, and then they tried to revive it in 1996 with the made-for-TV movie that no one talks about, and then they brought it back again in 2005, and it was the 2005 iteration that stuck. But now that 2005 iteration is running out of steam because, as I brought up, I think the biggest point is that the fact that the show has been running for 20 years, it was always going to be difficult to maintain interest. If you remove the issue with the streaming services, if you want to stream all the episodes of New Who, you have to have HBO Max and Disney+. Ignore that. Ignore the increased production budget. Ignore the fewer episodes every season. You're still left with a show that has run for 20 years, and it had a great run from like 2006 to 2013 up to the very end of the Matt Smith era. And that is very, very rare for a TV show to accomplish. But quite frankly, New Who has simply just ran for far too long. And you know what? Probably deserves a little bit of a break. And will the show come back? I'm not a future teller, but again, in my opinion, Doctor Who is way too iconic to just completely go away. But Doctor Who, as we know it right now, might be coming to an end.